Warrior, and thanks for watching. Today we're going to disassemble a 4L80E transmission out of a Humvee into its major components. This isn't going to require a lot of specialized tools, but if it does, I will go over them as you use them. Hope you guys enjoy it. Alright guys, so we have the transmission chucked up in the holding tool. The holding tool is one of those specialty tools that's really nice to have, but if you don't, you can take a workbench like I've got over here, stand it up on the end, let the tail shaft poke through, and you can disassemble it that way. It's a little harder, but you can still do it. Of note, when you do use one of these, something to note is you don't want to get the screw too tight here or the screw too tight on the top here, because if you do that, it will deform the case and the center support will be next to impossible to get out. So, first thing first, after it's set up, you can see there is fluid draining out of the bottom there. We want to make sure we try to get all the fluid that we can out of it. It will just make our next operations easier. The first things that I like to do, I like to remove everything external from the transmission. So for whatever reason this thing would have came in with a dipstick, we would take the dipstick out. Usually that stays with the vehicle, not always. We are going to remove the cooler fittings. This is 3/4 or 19 millimeter here. We will just zip those out. All right, now the reason we do that, you'll see here, this cooler fitting extends into the case of the transmission. This is denoting a late model application. Extends into the case and it actually goes into the center support. So if you do not remove this fitting and then try to remove the center support, you will break the fitting. So, set those aside. What you can't see on the other side of the transmission, actually I'll just bring you right over here. Here, this is the transmission input speed sensor, and then down here we have the transmission output speed sensor. Those have already been removed, so we do not need to do that. All right, next, now we have the stuff off the outside, we are going to remove the transmission pan. I like to do it in an upright position like this, so all the fluid can drain out. The last one, hold the pan in place, and the pan comes off with ease. Now, normally when we see these, they have a ton of black material, clutch material, and steels. This does not have that. It also doesn't have a magnet, which is odd, which tells me that someone has been in this transmission before and didn't put a magnet in it. So, I got the pan off. I have a cart back here. We'll just set the magnet on it. We'll set the pan on it. Now, we'll go ahead and rotate it on over. All right, we will remove the filter. Now, every time I look, I do it something I'm inspecting. You can see this filter is fairly clean. Looks like it's been changed recently. All right, next, we're going to remove the wiring harness that connects the shift solenoids and the range pressure switch and force motor torque converter lockup solenoid. So start from this side and just unplug them. You have to mark them. You can't put them in wrong. I like to use a pocket screwdriver. Pop them loose so you don't break the ears off. Be careful, they can be very brittle. Now that we have our wiring harness unplugged from everything and out of the way, we're going to take an 1.5 inch 12-point socket. We put it over, and I will give you a better idea what we're actually doing when I get the harness out. Take an 1.5 inch socket to compress the ears like that, and then we give her a gentle prime. And the harness comes right out. So what we're doing when we do this, you have these little ears that clip the transmission, the harness into the transmission. So when we put our socket over it, it just compresses those ears down, and a 12-point 1.25" socket is the perfect size for that. So go ahead and put this in the pan. All right, next to come out is going to be the range pressure switch. It's got 6 8mm bolts, 8mm head bolts. And do that, pulls right off. I like to set all these bolts with the range pressure switch all together. While we're inspecting, we see that there is a bit of clutch material in the range pressure switch. So keep that in mind when we go through the rest of the transmission. Next, we are going to remove the rest of the valve body. When we do that, first thing we have to do is remove this lubrication tube. It feeds the rear bushing. So that is a 10mm bolt. It's not a special bolt or anything, but I do like to keep it with its mate. So set that in one of our containers. Then we'll remove the parking called the detent spring. Also, same bolts as everything else. And then we'll just remove the rest of the bolts for the valve body. Noting where our wire holders for the wiring harness go. You go here, and then you go there. So easy way to think of it is you have the bolt on the corner. That will route the wires around to the front, and they just count back 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's right there in line with it. All right, see it pop up, and we have them all loose. We're going to pick that up, just like that. Set it on the bench. Now we're going to remove all the bolts. All right, we've got all the bolts out. So, carefully, we're going to flip the valve body over and make sure that no balls, no check balls, are attached to the separator plate. I've seen that happen before, and then they fall on the ground and you can't find them. So, what we need to make sure of when we take this next step, we want to pull 8 check balls out of this transmission. If we don't have 8 check balls, we have a problem. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I put these in the same container as the bolts for the valve body, because they're all going to go back in at the same time. So, now we're going to take our valve body. We're going to set it in the transmission pan. We will get to it later. Next, we're going to take the manual 2 brake band servo out. They just pull out pretty easy like that. It's got a little clutch material on it. And we pull the spring out. So you'll notice in some manuals, they can show older models, and the older models have a spring retainer, I guess you would say, on the top. This is a late model transmission, it does not. If you have a late model transmission, tear it apart, and then use the ATRA manual that shows the early model spring, you'll pull your hair out trying to find the piece that you don't actually have. Ask me how I know. So, we'll take that and set it into one of our containers. Next is the low reverse servo. It's got 6 10mm head bolts, and we'll just pull that out quick. All right, I'll hold the bolts, take the servo, You'll notice it's got metal and clutch contamination here. So it's looking more and more like this thing is cooked. Somebody did a fluid and filter change, and that's why the fluid looks so good, but I'd say this thing is toast. The problem that we had out of it was it would not shift out of second gear. It would go into manual 1, and you could pull it down into first gear, but it would not, on its own, go into first gear. It had second gear starts, and then would not shift out of second. It almost acted like it was electrically dead, but we know that it wasn't because we did the troubleshooting. So, we'll give that a quick wipe. Look at how bad it is. Take the gasket. We will not be reusing that, but I do keep it handy. Take a rag, grab the servo. There we go. Got it popped up. Pull it out. You'll notice in the cups and the servos, they are a collection point for trash. So this has an internal piston that will pop out. A lot of times you'll find a lot of trash down inside here. This one's not too bad. Mostly collected in the cup. Let that drain just a little bit. Pull the spring. Spring goes inside here. We'll set it in the cup and we'll set it in our tray. All right, the next thing that we should do is we should allow our transmission to drain again, because there's a lot of fluid in those servo cups that's now made its way into the case. So we want to allow our transmission to drain again. So we don't make too big a mess. All right, now that our transmission is draining, the next thing we need to do is pull the pump out. We have 2 more things to disassemble in the valve body area, but we're not going to do that at this time. All right, to take the pump out, you have a total of 7 pump body bolts. They are a 13 millimeter head. We will remove the bolts. We will probably reuse these. We're going to set them in a bit. Now, this is one of those times where it's really nice to have a tool like this. This particular model is a Kent Moore, part number J45053-2. It is a pump puller. I know for a fact this will work on different model transmissions, as long as you can grab the stator. It's got 4 brass jaws in here. Before we put the tool on, what we need to do is pull the torque converter clutch O-ring off of the input shaft. Otherwise, the stator will not slide over the input shaft, and you'll pull everything out in one piece together, and it's kind of heavy. So we will not be reusing that. Now, we can slide our pump puller tool. What I like to do is keep it just up off of the seal, crank down on it a little bit with a 9/16 wrench, get it tightened up. The trick is only tighten it as much as you need to. Otherwise, you will crush the stator, and it won't pull the pump off, and you'll pull the input shaft and everything out with it. Again, it's kind of heavy. You don't really want to do that. All right, looks like we've gotten a good grip on the pump stator. Oh, well, it's slipping now, so. There we go, I think we got her unstuck there. All right, got the pump out. Now that it's loose, you can spin it just a little bit, pull it straight up, and out. Set it on the bench. Flip it over. Here we can inspect the oil control rings that are here. We can also inspect the bushing, which looks to be in pretty good shape. Both of them inside there. So what we'll do, we will leave this attached, and we will just set it on our cart. All right, next we'll go ahead and pull out the overdrive assembly. Set that on the bench. Look for anything crazy. Everything looks to be good. there's a sprag in there that's got plastic cage. They like to kill themselves and melt. This one looks pretty good. All right, now that we've got the overdrive assembly out of the way, we're going to go ahead and take this T40 Torx and remove the 4th gear clutch assembly. This is a one-time use only bolt. We will not be reusing it. And you can just reach in, slide that right out. These look to be in good shape, don't look to be burned up or anything. I think they'll make it to another day. Go ahead and set this on our cart. All right, next is another one of those tools that are really nice to have, but we don't have to have it. This will grip the inside of the forward clutch. This is a Kent Moore tool, J38358A. Reach inside, grab it, pull that right out. Now, flip it over, flip the forward clutch over, and everything looks to be in okay condition. A lot of times if the direct clutch burns up, you will see discoloration on the pressure plate for the forward clutch. Doesn't look like that happened here. Next, we need to pull the forward clutch out. I'll give you a better idea of how that looks. Okay, that's the forward clutch down inside there. How the book tells you to do it, which is normally how I do things, how the book tells you to do it is to remove the forward clutch pressure plate, remove the direct clutch pressure plate, take the forward clutch pressure plate, install it, and then you can lift it out. However, what I do is I will take a 90-degree pick like this, and it looks like a corkscrew type pick. I will get in there and I'll just lift it out, and I'll show you how to do that. Got a good grip, just lift it right up as we drop it. All right, now that we've pulled that out, it doesn't look like we have a lot of discoloration or burned up clutches in there. That remains to be seen. This is more often than not the failure point on Humvee transmissions. It's got a one-way roller clutch here. Looks to work. We will inspect that at a later date. All right, next. Give you another look inside this transmission here. That is the intermediate clutch down there, and you can also see the front band. That's pretty much just reach in, pull it off the tab here. There's inside the case there, a stud that lines up with that, and then you can just pull it out. There's a better view of the stud inside the case. Also, you'll notice that there's a snap ring that holds the intermediate clutches in. We'll pull that snap ring out and pull those clutches out. Since we have the band out, we're going to go ahead and give it a look over, and it looks to be in pretty good shape. I would, if I needed to, I would reuse that. All right, just going to reach down in here with a pick and a screwdriver. Going to get the snap ring out for the intermediate clutches. They usually come out pretty easy. Snap ring. Wipe it off, it looks good. Pull our clutches out as an assembly, along with the wave plate. Go through those real quick. Those look to be in pretty good shape. It might have gotten a little, no, that's just a little clutch dust. They look like they are hardly worn at all. This sits right on top of the center support. That'll go in first, also come out first. So I'd keep those together. With the snap ring, it's easy to interchange them if you are not paying attention. So we'll just take these and set them on the car. Next, we have the center support. This is where we need to remove one more bolt. It's a 3/8 12-point socket. All right. This is also a one-time use only bolt, so we're going to go ahead and shit can that one too. Show you back in here again. You see there is a snap ring down in here. This one's pretty tough snap ring. It's pretty stout. So it can take some messing with to get out. Also, you'll notice it has not been rebuilt correctly. There's this gap right here that should be at the 9 o'clock position, and it is not. It specifically says in the book to put it in a 9 o'clock position so the next poor bastard that has to take it apart can actually get it out. So this should be fun. All right. After some cussing and maybe a little bleeding, we have got the center support snap ring out of it. Now, at this point, there's one of those fancy tools that we, in this case, do not have. We will substitute with a pair of C-channel vice grips. What we're going to do is we're going to clamp onto the output shaft, and we're going to pull everything out as a unit. And when I get it clamped, I will move the camera to show you what I got. All right, this is what we're looking at right here. It's just clamped on the output shaft, and that's our handle to pull everything out. Okay, so now you see all we're left with is a low reverse snap ring. I can get a better view. A low reverse snap ring, the low reverse band, and the selective shim in the back of the transmission to set in play. What we have on the table here is the assembly. It includes the center support right here. Look at it, looks to be in okay shape. Oil control rings look good. You have a shim that goes back here. Now keep in mind, these will leak transmission fluid everywhere because there's fluid in the pistons. You have always attached a piece of a bearing. I like to leave it there. I'll show you where it goes to here in a second. Part of the rear intermediate. I think it's intermediate. Planetary gear set. You have your one-way roller clutch in here. Looks to be in pretty good shape. Everything here looks good. You have your thrust washer here. We'll get that. It goes on the other side. Have a bushing right here. I like to check the condition of our bushings. This has some metal inclusion, but that will probably clean right up. This is part of the. This is a Sun gear shaft. It's got bushings in it. They look to be in tolerable condition. This is the Sun gear. The other half of that bearing is right here. It goes on there like so. Sun gear looks to be in good shape. And then the rear, the output shaft and the rear plant. And we'll set these parts on our cart, and we'll get to the very last of it. Also, something that I kind of skipped over in the inspection phase. This is intermediate planet. The low reverse band acts on this as a drum, and we like to look at the friction surface. This looks like it has seen better days. It's a little grooved up, but it is still definitely serviceable. It's not burnt, it's just a little shiny. So we have here, you'll see that snap that snap ring right there, that's right above, all that does, it's considered the low reverse snap ring, but all that does is that is a piece of steel that the center support sits on. So it's not sitting right on the aluminum of the case. And then also in there you see that low reverse band. And the selective shims. So we're going to pull the shims out first. We have our shim, actual shim, and then this is the thrust bearing that goes on the end of the rear planet. Reach right in here, it's really easy. This is a pretty thin snap ring. Reach in, pull that snap ring right out. Now, we are going to keep this with the low reverse band so we don't get these mixed up. Because like I said, this can kind of look like the intermediate clutch snap ring. And if you switch them, you'll never get the center support to sit down where it's supposed to. Now, there is a bit of a trick to get the low reverse band out of this transmission. If you look down here, where we pulled that low reverse servo out of, right here, the apply is through this board. So if you take a number 3 Phillips screwdriver, you can see inside here how it applies the band, you know? Right? So it makes it smaller, okay? That is gonna allow us the ability to get it out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press my number 3 Phillips screwdriver through the hole, compress the band, and then I'm going to reach up at about the 3 o'clock position, and I'm going to turn the band and just pull it straight out. I'll show you how that works. So press, and pull, and it pulls right out. And it looks to be in okay shape. And that, aside from removing the manual shift linkage, which we are not going to do. That covers the disassembly of the major components of a 4L80E. All right, guys, appreciate you watching my video. Hope you guys at home get an idea of what I do on the daily, or any home builders that want to build a transmission, really common in older GM trucks, especially heavy-duty applications. So, all right, guys, appreciate it. Just remember, when avoidance, deterrence, and de-escalation fail, a high rate of fire usually doesn't.